The Whispering Wind. Once upon a time, in a village nestled at the edge of an endless savanna, the golden grasses danced gently in the breeze, and the sun began its descent, draping the landscape in warm hues. Amina, with her soft brown skin that glowed in the fading light, sat cross-legged in her vibrant garden filled with herbs and flowers. Sweet scents wafted through the air, creating a sanctuary of peace amid the growing tension in the village. Amina's hands moved deftly among the plants, gently coaxing life from the earth. She had learned from her grandmother the ancient art of healing, nurturing not only the body but also the spirit. Calendula, chamomile, and lemongrass thrived under her care, infused with the love she poured into their growth. With each blossom, memories of laughter and storytelling from her youth flowed back, making her smile. Among the many plants she tended was a small plot dedicated to a rare herb known to cure fevers. Amina's heart swelled with hope. Its delicate blue flowers would attract those who needed her care. Her reverie was interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. Kofi, the lively son of Mama Omari, bounded into her garden, his cheeks flushed with excitement. "Amina! Amina," he called, his voice a melody that sliced through the air like a joyful bird song. "Mama said you have something to make me better." "What troubles you, little one?" she asked, kneeling beside him, her face warm with affection. "My tummy hurts," Kofi replied, scrunching his freckled nose. Amina gestured for him to sit on a flat stone near her herb plot. "It may be something you ate, but I know just the remedy." She rummaged through her collection, then carefully selected fresh peppermint leaves and a pinch of ginger. "This tea will soothe your bellies." Kofi's eyes sparkled with curiosity as he watched her crush the leaves and prepare the herbal infusion. He always found magic in her presence, as if she whispered secrets of the world in each crafted potion. As the aroma filled the air, he could feel a warmth blooming in his heart. "Amina," he began, sipping the tea tentatively, "do you think the rain will come back soon?" Amina paused for a moment, recalling the dry spell that had settled over their village like an unwelcome guest. "The rains are fickle, my dear. We must stay hopeful. They will return when we least expect it." But deep within, she worried. The drought had lasted too long, causing the villagers to grow restless and fearful. She had sensed the whispers, the fingers of suspicion beginning to point in her direction as crops withered and water ran low. Just then, they heard faint cries from the direction of the village center. Amina's brow furrowed as she stood, her heart quickening. "What's going on, Kofi? Let's see." Together they hurried toward the commotion. Arriving at the gathering place under the ancient baobab tree, Amina saw villagers milling about, their faces tight with worry. Mama Omari stood among them, her powerful voice raising above the crowd. "We cannot sit idly by while our children suffer. We must take action." Amina stepped forward, her heart pounding as she took in the sight of her friends and neighbors, people she had devoted her life to helping. "Mama Omari, please, let me help." But the crowd, fueled by desperation and fear, turned toward her, eyes growing wary. "It's your potions that brought this upon us," someone shouted, their voice cutting through the murmurs like a sharp knife. Amina felt a chill grip her heart. "I only wish to heal," she pleaded, feeling the weight of injustice pressing down upon her. But as the crowd murmured in discontent once more, she began to realize that her community was slipping away from her, locked in chains forged of their own despair. Kofi pulled on her arm, sensing her turmoil. "Amina, let's go back," he whispered urgently. With her heart heavy, Amina turned, but not without stealing one last glance at the faces twisted in confusion and fear. In that moment, she understood. A dark cloud was settling in the hearts of her people, and she could feel the whisper of a storm brewing on the horizon. As they walked back to the safety of her garden, Amina couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at a precipice, teetering dangerously on the edge of misunderstanding. The wind picked up, carrying with it the whispers of fears unspoken, and in that moment, she felt the weight of her world shift. Little did they know, the trials that lay ahead would challenge their bonds in ways they never imagined. Cries of suspicion would soon turn to kindness, but only if the embers of truth could be ignited in the hearts of those once full of love. Shadows of despair. The sun rose over the village, but its light felt muted, overshadowed by a deep sense of foreboding. In the days following Amina's encounter at the gathering place, The air grew thick with tension. Fear had taken root among the villagers like weeds in a cherished garden. Each day that passed under the relentless sun without rain left the fields dry and the spirits of the people low. Mama Omari had become a fierce figure in the village. She accused the gods of turning their backs on them, and her anger manifested as an urgency that hung heavy in the air. The villagers, often drawn to her wisdom, now found themselves caught under her stormy influence, seeking answers where none seemed to exist. Gathered in the shade of the great baobab tree, a circle of men and women spoke in hushed tones, their expressions grave. "We need to act before it is too late," one man murmured. "If we do nothing, we will lose our crops and our children." The words echoed through the group, generating a ripple of agreement. Each face reflected the desperation brewing within their hearts. It was there that Mama Omari stood at the center of the circle, her voice rising above the murmurs. "We must seek out the cause of our suffering. Amina has taken our good fortune and turned it to dust. We must confront her." The crowd shifted, tension crackling in the dry air, eyes darting toward each other with uncertainty. Kofi, who had been playing nearby, felt the weight of change in the air. He watched as his mother's face twisted with emotions. Anger, fear, and something deeper. The reality of the situation twisted inside him. How could they turn on Amina? She had always cared for him, tended his wounds, and made him feel better. He felt a tugging at his heart as he tried to call out to his mother, to tell her what Amina did for them. "Mama," he called, his small voice cutting through the assembly. "Amina is our friend. She helps everyone." Mama Omari turned, her expression softened only for a brief moment before hardening again. "You don't understand, Kofi. This drought has stripped us of our crops, our safety, and threatens our very lives. Desperation breeds anger, and our anger must have a target." "But it's not Amina. He began, but his words were drowned out by the rising clamor of the villagers. "Enough," Mama Omari commanded, and silence fell over the group. "If we want to save our village, we must act decisively. We'll gather this evening and demand answers from her." As she spoke, Kofi gripped his little fists, confused and frightened. That bright afternoon in Amina's garden felt like a distant memory, a cherished treasure slipping further away. The rumors of blame weighed heavy in his heart, and he simply wanted to protect the woman who had always been there for him. Hours drifted by, and as the sun began to set, the village pulsed with unease. The gathering place filled with villagers, agitated whispers creating a current of fear that coursed through their ranks. Kofi stood beside his mother, clutching her hand tightly, longing for the warmth of reassurance that seemed to have vanished. The crowd went silent as Amina walked toward them, her graceful figure framed by the glow of the setting sun. She carried a basket of herbs, and as she approached, the tension in the air thickened almost suffocatingly. "What troubles you, friends?" Amina asked, her voice calm despite the mounting hostility. "We know why our crops are withering, Amina. The gods have cast their eyes away from us because of you," shouted one of the villagers, his brows drawn tight. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Shocked expressions flashed like wildfire. Amina faltered, the harshness of their words cutting deep. "I would never wish harm upon any of you. My intention has always been to heal." Mama Omari stepped forward, a silhouette of vengeance. "We're desperate, Amina. When the rains return, we will praise you. When they do not, we will hold you accountable." The crowd murmured their unyielding agreement. Kofi felt like he was being trapped under an invisible weight as anger and fear rippled through the assembly, painting the air with bitter clouds. Waves of despair coursed through Amina, her heart breaking for the community that had come to see her as the architect of their suffering. "I will do everything in my power to help," she pled, desperation in her tone. "We can pray together, or I can help you prepare. We can heal our land." But her earnestness met with skepticism. "Your potions will not save us now. What we need is a sacrifice to appease the gods," someone else shouted. Fear turned to rage, and Kofi's heart raced. He looked to his mother, hoping for a flicker of understanding, an acknowledgement of Amina's love, but her gaze remained locked on the healer, her heart evidently clouded by anger. Tears threatened to brim in Kofi's eyes. His mind raced. He had to do something. "Mama, he cried once again, stepping forward. Please, this isn't right. But just as he reached out for his mother, the crowd surged, enveloping Amina in a sea of accusing voices. They demanded answers, drawn into the tempest of emotions that swirled around them. Amina stood firm against the storm, her heart heavy and her spirit wounded. I am not your enemy, she called out, but her voice was lost in the chaos. All around her, shadows loomed, shadows that could consume the light of love and understanding that had once radiated so brightly among them. A heart-wrenching realization dawned. She could feel the unforgiving grip of sorrow tightening around the village. In their search for certainty and solace, they had allowed despair to erode the bonds that had once defined them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a twilight sky, Kofi felt helpless, caught between love and fear, trapped in a world where shadows whispered discord. It was a world he never wanted to believe existed, yet there they were, the villagers, his mother and Amina, all poised on the brink of a crisis that could shatter everything they cherished. The perfect storm. The village awoke to a sky painted in shades of grey, the foreboding clouds heavy with the promise of conflict. Amina had spent an agonizing night tossing and turning, her heart entwined in spirals of worry. Could the heart of her beloved village turn so dark? Cracking dawn's light pierced the clouds, awakening Kofi, who stared blankly at the ceiling of their small hut, his mind swirling with thoughts of his mother's mounting anger and the whispers of fear that echoed about Amina. Mama Omari presented a formidable front that day as she prepared for the morning gathering. She paced around the hut, her linen cloth flowing with purpose. Kofi watched her with a mixture of awe and fear. This was a woman shaped by strength and unwavering will, but today he could see the storm brewing inside her, the fierce resolve hiding a vulnerability. Are you coming, Kofi? She called, breaking his reverie. Can't we just stay? What if they say something terrible to Amina? He protested, clutching the thin sheet over his head. Mama Omari's jaw tightened. She's brought this upon herself. She could have saved us, save your friends. The drought isn't just a coincidence. It's a curse. He felt a knot forming in his stomach. But Mama, she helps everyone. She made me feel bettered. Her eyes softened for a brief moment, a flicker of warmth buried under layers of determination. We need to gather our strength and make the right decision, Kofi. Reluctantly, they moved toward the gathering place, his heart pounding like a drum. The crowd had begun to swell, tension thickening the air until it was nearly tangible. Villagers exchanged worried glances, and whispers fluttered like frightened birds among them. As they arrived, Kofi noticed Amina standing apart from the rest, her shoulders squared with resolute calmness, despite the fear shimmering in her eyes. They were poised for battle, as if any misstep or imprudent word could send them all spiraling into the tempest of uncertainty that enveloped the gathering. Just then, a crowd member stepped forward, a man named Baiko, known for his fiery temperament and loud voice. We cannot let our crops die in vain. Amina is the source of our suffering. We must decide how to deal with her. His words struck like thunder, igniting the crowd. Kofi's heart raced, and he clung to his mother's side, hoping she would retain a semblance of reason. Mama Omari lifted her chin, and with steely authority, she challenged Baiko. What do you suggest? That we turn against the very one who has always helped us. Exactly. Baiko seethed. How can you defend her when our children go hungry? Snakes hide in the grass until it's time to bite. She has poisoned us with her curses. Gasps rippled through the crowd as several murmured in agreement. Kofi felt despair tighten its grip around his heart. She's not a snake, he cried out, unable to hold back. She's our friend. Silence. Mama Omari barked, and Kofi's voice faded into the clamoring storm. Amina moved forward, her presence grounding the chaos swaying around them. I have never cursed our village, Amina said, her voice steady but laced with an undertone of hurt. Would I have destroyed the land I love? I only want to heal. Let's not lose hope. We can pray together to find strength in each other. But the crowd, once a tapestry of community, now felt like a fractured mosaic, scattered pieces barely holding together. The accusations mounted, each voice louder than the last, and soon it became a perfect storm of blame and anger, swirling ever closer to a climax. We must appease the gods, a woman cried out, desperation etched across her face. Make a sacrifice. Amina must pay for our suffering. Only then might the rains returns. Sacrifice. Kofi's voice broke through, trembling with emotion. What would that even mean? Amina has done nothing wrong. Mama Omari's gaze was fiercely determined, and for Kofi, it felt as though she were straddling a chasm between compassion and wrath. We need to protect our children. If this is what it takes, then perhaps we must consider it. Kofi felt every word sink into him like stones in water, weighing him down. He watched helplessly as more villagers rallied around Mama Omari's harsh stance. Amina stood resolute, her hand outstretched in a plea for understanding, but it only made the crowd angrier. His heart raced as he felt the earth rumbling underfoot, resonating with the tension in the air. The whispers of doubt and fear clutched at Kofi's insides, while Amina's tears shimmered in her eyes, each one like a small candle about to be extinguished. Friends, we have been united in sorrows, once so filled with laughter and camaraderie. Where has that light gone? Amina implored, shaking with emotion. Look among us. Is this the bond we wish to break? Fear will consume us if we allow it to fester. But her words were swept away in the maelstrom, drowned out by anger and fear. The villagers moved closer, emboldened by their collective anxiety, and Kofi felt a surge of desperation. Suddenly, storm clouds rolled through the sky, heavy and pregnant with rain, mirroring the turmoil within the gathering. Kofi! Amina cried, a hint of fear in her voice. You must tell them. Tell them we're stronger together. Kofi's heart beat like a war drum, and as the crowd surged forward, he took a deep breath. Amina has always cared for us. She saved my life, and I know she'll do the same for you. We can't let fear decide our fate. His voice rang through the gathering, but it was only a flicker in the raging storm. They only became more entrenched in their beliefs. Mama Omari stepped forward, intensity swirling in her eyes. We must do what is necessary. We cannot afford to lose any more time. Kofi felt the storm brewing in the air, felt deep within himself the clash of emotions threatening to burst into flame. She's not the enemy, he yelled desperately, but the words could only linger in the air, slowly dissipating among the crowd's growing cries. The clash of wills reached a crescendo. Amina stood frightened yet resolute, a figure encased in the eye of the storm as the tempest around her raged. Kofi tightened his fists, his heart heavy, knowing that a fracture had formed within their beloved village, threatening to rend them apart. In that moment, he realized the unfortunate truth, that in their search for answers, they could unravel the very fabric of their unity. The storm, relentless and unyielding, began to mirror the tumult of hearts around them, threatening to tear them all apart, leaving them lost in shadows of despair. The mark of guilt. The oppressive atmosphere in the village had taken on an almost palpable weight, like a heavy fog that curled around the hearts of the people, tightening its grip with every passing day. Amina stood apart from the crowd, her spirit battered yet unbroken. The gathering had unfolded into chaos, each harsh word flung at her like a stone, igniting wounds within her that had yet to heal. She remained by the garden's edge, watching villagers move about like apparitions, consumed by their grief and fear. Each face seemed to echo a different accusation, their once familiar smiles morphing into harsh glares. The laughter that used to flood the air around her felt like a distant memory, a tender song silenced by suspicion. Kofi, still reeling from the earlier confrontation, approached Amina with determination etched on his small face. Amina, he said softly, his voice trembling, I don't understand. Why do they blame you? Amina knelt down to meet his gaze, her eyes reflecting sadness and resolve. Sometimes, Kofi, when fear clouds our judgment, we cast blame without thinking. They are desperate and have lost sight of what unites us. But you've always helped us. You saved me, he protested, frustration igniting his youthful bravery. You would never hurt anyone. She cupped his face gently in her hands. And that is what we must hold on to, Kofi. We cannot let fear erase the truth or the bond we share. Not now. Yet even as she spoke, a chilling gust blew across the village, rustling through the withered leaves and carrying with it a sense of foreboding, as if the winds themselves were whispering tales of discontent. That evening, the village gathered once more under the ancient baobab tree, the air electric with tension. Among them stood Mama Omari, her expression both fierce and mournful. Kofi could see the conflict tearing through his mother, her heart locked in battle against her mind's desperate need for answers. "Tonight, we will confront the truth behind our suffering," she began, her voice steady but resonating with an underlying tremor. "We cannot stand idly by while our children go hungry and our land withers. Amina cannot simply go unchallenged." A murmured agreement coursed through the crowd, a wave of anger and sorrow merging into one. Amina arrived at the gathering, her heart pounding. "I am here to listen," she declared, though a sense of dread settled in her stomach. "I want to help us find a way forward." "Help?" one villager scoffed. "Help us with what? More curses? You've brought this on us." Amina felt the burn of tears rising in her throat but fought them back. "I've dedicated my life to healing. I would never harm my home." "Then where are the rains, Amina?" Baiko shouted. "Where is the evidence of your healing?" Silence enveloped the gathering, and Amina's chest tightened. The burden of guilt pressed down upon her, unbearable and all-consuming. I do not control the weather. All I can offer are my skills, my knowledge." "And your skills have failed us," a woman stepped forward, her voice filled with agony. "My children suffer. My husband toils in the fields day after day, and there is nothing left. What do we have but empty promises?" Kofi felt himself shrink under the weight of their words, the anger swirling around like a tempest, threatening to engulf them all. He looked at his mother, at Amina, and felt his heart ache for both sides, a pull between what he had been taught to value and the injustice unfolding before him. As Amina's palms pressed together, seeking comfort through prayer, a loud voice erupted from the crowd. "If we cannot rid ourselves of this curse, then we must do what is necessary. A sacrifice must be made." The crowd shifted, anticipation palpable in the air. Kofi's heart dropped as he realized where the tide was turning. "No," he shouted, stepping forward defiantly. "You can't mean that." But the storm had taken over. Voices roared in agreement, fueled by desperation, as they saw the chance to restore balance, to reclaim their livelihoods. They began to chant for retribution, and Kofi felt helpless, paralyzed by fear. "You are the reason for our suffering, Amina," Baiko shouted, loud enough for all to hear. "Your presence disrupts the harmony of our village. Either you are cast out, or we face certain doom." The crowd surged with fervor, hands clenched and faces taut with conviction. It was no longer just Amina they sought to punish, it was the very essence of hope that was being challenged. Kofi's heart raced as he tried to make sense of it all, aware that he stood on a precipice alongside Amina. "Do not let fear govern our actions," Amina implored, her voice rising above the cacophony. "We can find strength in unity, not sacrifice in anger." But as she spoke those words, doubt began to linger in the air. The emotional storm spinning within the crowd mirrored the tumult brewing in Kofi's heart. He watched as doubt etched deep lines into the villagers' faces, fear morphing into a twisted form of righteousness. Suddenly, Mama Omari's voice cut through the noise, ringing with clarity. "We must not act on impulse or emotion. We are better than this." Yet, in her effort to rein in the crowd, she found herself met with resistance. They have chosen to shift their blame away from their own failures. Amina must face the consequences if we are to have peace. "Peace?" Kofi cried, shaken. "What about the peace we once had? Amina would never harm us. Don't you remember our laughter, our shared meals, and the love we poured into these lands?" Gasps echoed through the assembly, and for a moment, the fire of emotion flickered as their memories of belonging washed over them. But the memories were fleeting, dimmed by the overwhelming grief of their current plight. Amina, standing tall against the rising tide of resentment, held her breath, awaiting something, anything, to forge a bridge of understanding among them. Yet the chasm deepened, the mark of guilt now embossed upon her heart. Maybe this is my fault," Amina whispered, the self-blame riddling her very soul. "If you believe I am the cause of your suffering, then perhaps it is true in your eyes. I will accept whatever punishment you deem necessary." The crowd shifted uneasily, the implications of her words clawing at each conscience. But the seeds of doubt had already taken root, twisting their perceptions as they began to drift further away from empathy. Kofi's heart sank as he realized that he was witnessing the unraveling of everything he held dear. The winds of change had morphed into a storm, and Amina bore the brunt of their fury. And in the shadows, amidst the clamor of discontent, the mark of guilt was now indelibly etched upon their hearts, foreboding as the storm clouds above. The warmth of community had been replaced by the stark reality of isolation, threatening to drown the hope that once thrived among them. Jabari's wisdom. As the tension in the village simmered, the air crackled with an electric energy, heavy with unsaid words and unheeded emotions. Night had drawn its dark curtain across the sky, but it did nothing to quell the unrest circulating in the hearts of the villagers. They gathered under the expansive branches of the baobab tree, but instead of finding solace within each other's company, they stood divided. Amidst the chaos, an unexpected figure emerged from the shadows. A wise old tortoise named Jabari, his slow, deliberate movements embodying years of observation and knowledge. With each soft sound of his feet on the earth, a sense of calm radiated from him, enveloping the discord like a gentle embrace. Jabari had long been cherished by the village, a silent guiding spirit who imparted insight through parables and stories. He had been present through many storms, weathered the trials of life, and had earned the trust of all who listened to his words. As he shuffled to the center of the gathering, silence began to fall, drawing attention to the ancient tortoise who so often spoke the language of wisdom. "Villagers," Jabari called, his voice deep and resonant as it flowed through the air like a soft breeze. "Tonight, I see many of you lost in shadows, hearts heavy with fear and anger. My good friends, we must gather our courage, for every storm that comes carries with it the seeds of both destruction and renewals." Kofi, who had taken a few steps forward to observe, felt a flicker of hope spark within him as Jabari's presence anchored the moment. The tortoise was not just an elder, he represented the spirits of their shared history, a living reminder of the wisdom that had guided their ancestors. Baiko stood firm, arms crossed defiantly. "What do you know about it, Jabari? Our lives are at stake. Amina has taken our prayers and twisted them into curses against us." Jabari nodded appreciatively, acknowledging Baiko's anger. "I have seen many trials like this one, young one. I have witnessed hope dissolve in the face of despair, only to find new life springing forth from the ashes. But anger will not bring forth the rains, nor will it heal the bonds that our hearts so desperately needs." "Mama Omari says Amina is responsible for the drought," another villager chimed in, her voice imbued with uncertainty. "What if the gods have turned against us?" "Let me tell you a tale," Jabari began, aware he required an approach that warmed their hearts rather than stoked their fears. "Many moons ago, a different village suffered a drought much like your own. They too searched for answers and found themselves divided, filled with suspicion towards their own. But one wise elder gathered the people together at dusk, like we are now, and spoke of the importance of communities. Curiosity began to draw the villagers in, their attention shifting towards the tortoise. His presence was soothing, much like the gentle rainfall they so longed for. This elder spoke of a unique flower that bloomed only in the most hostile conditions. It thrived not in solitude but in harmony with its neighbors. As the villagers ventured out, seeking this rare flower, they learned to work together, sharing knowledge and resources, turning every confrontation into cooperations. Kofi leaned in, his heart racing with the thrill of the story. He glanced at Amina, wondering if she drew strength from Jabari's words as well. They formed bonds that transcended their previous quarrels. In time, they found not just the flower they sought, but along their journey learned how to cultivate hope in one another, and so the rains returned to bless their fields. "But how can we trust Amina after all that has happened?" Someone shouted from the back of the crowd, skepticism still shadowing their hearts. Jabari faced the crowd with unwavering resolve. "Trust is a delicate flower, one that must be nurtured to bloom. It cannot thrive under the weight of anger, nor can it grow in the absence of understanding. Perhaps it is time to understand not just Amina's role but our own, how we can all contribute to the restoration of trust and unity." The murmurs ignited as villagers began to process the implications of Jabari's words. Kofi felt it too. This was their opportunity, a chink of light cutting through the clouds of doubt. He stepped forward, emboldened by the tortoise's gentle wisdom. Jabari is right. Kofi cried out, a spark of determination igniting within him. We've shared many good moments with Amina. She's healed us, and she's always cared for us, me especially. Instead of casting her aside, let's ask her how she can help us now. A ripple of surprise spread through the crowd, but Kofi pressed on, locking eyes with Mama Omari and showing her the truth he saw. Let's work together to find a solution. Each one of us can have a part in this. Every setback can be a stepping stone if we choose to stand together, rather than apart. Jabari, with a glint of approval in his eyes, added, sometimes, the strongest bonds are forged in times of greatest struggle. It is our choice whether we allow fear to fracture us or lift us higher. With newfound courage, Kofi turned to Amina, who stood by, her spirit brightening in the glow of hope. Amina, can you help us heal our village? Together, I believe we can support you. As Amina hesitated for a moment, she slowly nodded, her expression shifting from uncertainty to renewed strength. Yes. I can create remedies that may help sustain us through this drought, but I need your support. We can gather the ingredients together, share our knowledge, and build a stronger community. The crowd began to murmur in agreement, voices rising with encouragement. Jabari's wisdom had ignited a spark of understanding and empathy, illuminating a path they could walk down together. The shadows receded, replaced by the glimmer of potential, and in that moment, Kofi felt a renewed sense of hope spread through the gathering. Let us be stronger than our fears, Jabari declared, a proud smile radiating from his ancient face. Together, we can weather any storm. Embrace the wisdom that lives within your hearts, and let it guide you toward unity. Only then will the rains return, blessings to wash away your troubles. As villagers nodded and began to disperse, fueled with a newfound determination, Kofi felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders. Amina walked closer, relief flooding her features. Thank you, Kofi, she whispered, gratitude shimmering in her eyes. Your bravery has sparked the flame of hope once more. Hand in hand, they turned together toward their village, stepping into the future with courage born of understanding, ready to reclaim the bonds lost in fear. Jabari trailed behind them, the wise tortoise watching over his community with the timeless knowledge that love could weather any storm. A mother's fury. The village simmered with renewed tension in the aftermath of Jabari's wise words. What had once seemed like an impending storm now felt transformed into a flicker of hope, but Mama Omari's heart remained tethered to the shadows of anger and fear. As dusk crept in, she paced within her sturdy hut, her mind swirling amid conflicting emotions. Kofi's words rang in her ears. Amina would never hurt us. Yet, as hunger gnawed at the bellies of her children and the fields turned to parched earth, her fears bubbled to the surface. How could she let go of the deep-seated anguish that lay heavy within her? What if her trust in Amina resulted in more suffering for her family? A sudden gust of wind swept through the cracked hut, rustling the thatched roof. The sound was unsettling, a reminder of the many voices that had echoed through the earlier gathering, impatient and demanding. Her fists clenched at her sides, a tempest brewing within her heart. When Kofi entered the hut, his face wary but hopeful, he sensed the turmoil surrounding his mother. Mama, please, he urged gently, can we give Amina a chance? She has promised to gather what we need to heal our village. Mama Omari turned sharply, her brow furrowing in frustration. Kofi, you are too young to understand the magnitude of this. The drought didn't just steal our crops, it has torn apart the very fabric of our lives. What will it take for you to see that Amina has brought this curse upon us? But you can't blame her for everything. Kofi argued, desperation edging his words. She cares for our village. All I see is anger. If we don't unify, we risk losing everything. Unity, she scoffed, anger igniting like a flame. Do you not see how our unity has already been threatened? Trust is fragile. It can be shattered with a whisper of doubt, and that doubt has transformed into fear. Amina may have nurtured relationships once, but what happens when desperation grips those within her reach? Kofi lowered his gaze, overwhelmed by the confusion swarming around them. I know what Amina has done for us. She's more than just a healer, she's a friend. Can't we rise above this, Mama? A silence lingered between them, thick and suffocating. The moon hung high overhead, its light casting shadows into the corners of their hut, echoing the darkness surrounding the soul of the village. Mama Omari felt the molten core of her fury bubbling to the surface, blurring the line between fear and protective love. "Mama, please," Kofi pleaded again, trying to pull her back from the ledge. "The village needs healing, and Amina offers that. Why can't you trust her?" "Because trust," Mama Omari spat, her voice rising in passion, "is rooted in actions. And where has she been in this time of need? While my children go hungry and my neighbors grow desperate, she wanders the forest, concocting potions. What good is a friend who only returns when the storm calms?" Kofi stepped back, hurt flashing in his eyes. "Amina has been there for me, helping me. I believe she can help everyone if you give her a chance." Mama Omari's heart thundered in her chest, wrestling with the surge of emotions she was battling. "You don't know what I have seen, Kofi. You don't understand the burden of a mother who watches her children suffer. I cannot let my heart be tainted by misjudgments." With that, she turned away from him, desperation overpowering her sense of reason. "Amina must pay for what's happened. I cannot escape the truth of our reality. If we allow her to remain among us without consequence, what safety do we have?" Kofi felt a fresh wave of anguish wash over him. Despite his youthful spirit, he had faced the stark reality of the situation. His mother was consumed by righteous anger, a force that would destroy all that they cherished if it remained unaddressed. "We cannot sacrifice her, Mama. That will not bring the rains, and you know it." Mama Omari whirled to face him, her breath catching in her throat as unfettered fury burned through her words. "And what would you have me do, Kofi? Stand idly by while our family breaks apart? How can I just watch as we spiral into despair?" "Please," Kofi begged, his voice trembling. "There has to be another way. Let's reach out to her together, ask her what we need to do. We can't allow fear to twist our actions." She paused, the fire in her eyes dimming as she regarded her son, a root of defiance growing against the shadow of fury swirling within. "You wish to talk with her, to plead her case to me? What if it's too late? You don't know what danger may lie beyond the safety of our walls." "There is danger everywhere, Mama," Kofi asserted, shaking with emotion. "But if we lean into worry, we will drown our hearts in violence. Amina possesses the knowledge to heal our village. Help us find balance again." Guilt welled up within her as she beheld Kofi, a reflection of the child she had once cradled in her arms. "When did we forget how to love?" he whispered, the shadows of doubt waning as a glimmer of resilience shone through. Yet Mama Omari wrestled with the remnants of her furious heart, still entangled in the nets of fear. She drew a deep breath, searching for clarity amidst the tumult. "If you truly believe in her, Kofi, then we shall go together. But if this is an act of futility, and we betray our people in our attempts to salvage a curse, the weight of our choices may break us in twos." Kofi hesitated for a second, the weight of responsibility settling across his shoulders. Yet somewhere within him flickered the flames of hope, and with it, he felt the bonds of love he had for his mother rising to the surface once more. "Together," he affirmed gently, reaching out to take her hand. As the two ventured from their hut, shadows began to melt away, visibility opening their hearts to the potential of what lay ahead. Swirling fears transformed into courage as they sought the dawn against the lingering darkness of their doubts. This was not just their journey, it was a quest to reclaim trust, to embrace the healing that lay just beyond their grasp. Mama Omari would learn to embrace love rather than succumb to rage, to nurture a spirit of unity rather than isolation. It was a journey toward a new tomorrow, even amidst the deep ache that still clung to the edges of her heart. As they walked towards Amina's hut, weaving through the village, a quiet determination coursed through Mama Omari. They had to discover together the truth that could bridge the divide between them, both as a family and as a village, before it was too late. Together they would fight against not just Amina's curse, but against the very fears that sought to divide them all. Into the flames. The villagers gathered again, but this time the mood was charged with a ferocity that crackled like fire. Kofi and Mama Omari stood together beneath the darkened sky, their breaths mingling and hanging heavy in the air. They approached Amina's hut, feeling the weight of their decision pressing down on them like the oppressive heat of the sun just before a storm. As they neared, Kofi's heart raced with a mix of trepidation and determination. The flickering shadows of the flickering torchlight cast long figures against the walls of the hut. More villagers had joined the tumultuous assembly, driven by anger, fear, and the insatiable need for answers. Their voices rose, forming a cacophony of chaos, overwhelming the tranquility that Amina's presence once offered. "Mama," Kofi whispered, squeezing his mother's hand tightly. "Are we really doing this?" Mama Omari, conflicted but resolute, nodded. "We must confront Amina. It is not just for us, it is for the village to find justice. We cannot falter now." "Justice or revenge?" Kofi pressed, his youthful heart aching at the prospect of what lay before them. "What if there is another way?" But Mama Omari's gaze was fixed firmly ahead as she steeled herself for the moment. "Sometimes, my dear, justice may feel like fire, and fire must be tempered with choice or it can consume everything in its path." As though summoned by the intensity of the crowd's charged emotions, Amina stepped out of her hut, her presence commanding yet vulnerable. She carried a small bundle of herbs, the moonlight illuminating her graceful features. Concern creased her brow as she regarded her friends and neighbors, apprehension evident in her eyes. "What is happening?" Amina asked, her voice quivering with uncertainty. "Why are you gathered at my door?" The words fell flat against the storm brewing in the hearts of the villagers. Baiko stepped forward, voice booming like thunder. "You know why we are here, Amina. It's time for you to answer for what you've brought upon us." His accusation stirred the crowd, murmurs rising like flames licking the night sky. Kofi felt the heat of collective anger intensifying, a primal urge to find a scapegoat amidst vulnerability and fear. "I have never wished harm upon our village," Amina stated, desperation creeping into her tone. "Yet here we stand, our crops withering, our children starving," another villager shouted, pointing an accusatory finger. "Do you really expect us to believe you are innocent?" The fire of wrath burned, warped by desperation. Kofi felt it too, the flicker of unity overshadowed by the darkness encroaching upon their hearts. He stepped forward, unwilling to allow the tide to carry them further into chaos. "Amina has helped us. No." Mama Omari interrupted sharply, fear rippling through her voice. "That is not our only concern. We cannot afford to lose more. I will not lose my children to the curse." Amina's eyes widened in disbelief, the weight of guilt crashing down as she searched for clarity in the sea of angry faces. "Friends, you know me, you know my heart. Whatever materializes within the winds cannot be controlled, but I assure you that I will not stand against you," she pleaded. The crowd simmered with tension, voices rising in conflict as Mama Omari surged forward, driven by a fierce determination she could hardly contain. "You think us blind? A sacrifice must be made if we are to end this suffering. It is the only way." "No!" Kofi yelled desperately, his small frame trembling. "Please, you can't do this. We can work together. We can." But the heat of fury had already burned through the fabric of reason. With swift, authoritative voice, Mama Omari raised her hand. "It has been decided. We must draw the line and take action." Baiko stepped closer to Amina. "If you are the cause of our suffering, you must pay with your freedom. We will burn your herbs, wipe away the echoes of your presence. Only then might the gods take notice and restore our lands." Amina stumbled backward, the horror of their words sinking into her bones. "Do not do this," she cried, desperation clawing at her throat. "I love this village. I would never wish upon you this pain I've lived with. Please." But the crowd was deaf to her pleas, the flames of their indignation blazing high. They stood united in their fear, driven by the primal instinct to protect but warped to an unspeakable end. Kofi felt the ground beneath him shake, a whirlwind of chaos spiraling out of control, and he realized with aching dread that the villagers were losing sight of their love and light. In one swift motion, villagers began to gather the herbs, snatching Amina's sacred remedies as she fell to her knees. Horrified, Kofi lunged forward, desperate to protect the one person who had offered so much love and warmth. "No! Stop!" he shouted as he reached Amina, wrapping his arms around her protectively. "You can't do this. We'll lose everything we cherish." Tears flowed from Amina's eyes, mingling with the plaintive desperation in her voice. Kofi, no. You can't put yourself in danger. They think this is the solution, but it will only breed more anguish. But Kofi stood firm, too resolute to back down. He could not let the fire of their anger consume the light of love that they had shared for too long. The villagers hesitated, now confronted with the innocent truth standing before them. In the flickering torchlight, Mama Omari's heart began to tremble at the image before her. A child standing bold against the raging wind, embodying the very bravery she had sought to protect. This was not her Kofi, a pawn caught in the tempest, but a shining example of resilience she could hardly recognize. No, she cried, summoning the last vestiges of her fury. We will not falter when faced with sacrifice. The air thickened, the flames now rising before them, shadows dancing ominously across the ground. Kofi glanced back, seeing the turmoil mirrored in Amina's eyes, their struggle extending beyond this moment. Amina, I'm sorry, he shouted, his heart breaking as the flames flickered hungrily. I will protect you. In that instant, a collective gasp rippled through the crowd, confusion wresting anger from their grips. Mama Omari's heart wavered as Kofi's love pierced through her own raging inferno. Perhaps the choice did not have to extinguish a life. Perhaps it merely needed the power to strengthen their bonds. As the fire crackled and the air sizzled with tension, Kofi took a deep breath, gathering all his courage. We must find our way back to each other, he implored, his voice rising above the chaos, a beacon of hope igniting underneath the threatening storm. And in that moment, amid the flicker of flames and the shadows of doubt, they stood on the brink, facing heartache together, for the power of choice was a flame with the potential to warm the heart or consume it with fury. What lay ahead would be paramount, an opportunity for redemption woven into the echoes of their choices. The power of story. Kofi stood before the flickering flames, his heart racing as it soared to heights he didn't know existed. Tension thickened the humid air around him. The villagers, momentarily halted by his defiance and the bond he shared with Amina, were caught in a tempest of emotions. In those crucial moments, Kofi felt the weight of not just their past but also their future resting on his small shoulders. Amina, still on her knees, looked up at Kofi, all mingling with gratitude in her tear-filled eyes. He realized they all yearned not just for healing but a narrative to guide them, a story that would rekindle their fragile unity. They needed to break free from the chains of fear binding them. A distinctive pulse echoed in Kofi's chest, and he gathered his breath, determined to share the power of story that resided within him. Everyone please, he urged, his voice cutting through the ambient fear like a sharp knife. Instead of condemning Amina, let us remember who we are as a community. Amina has always been our healer. It is time we share the truth. Stories shape us. They remind us of our shared humanities. The villagers shifted slightly, glancing at one another, contemplating his words like seeds that had yet to take root. Kofi saw the flickers of memories dancing in their eyes. Do you remember the tale of the sun and the moon? He began, allowing his voice to calm the restless crowd. Many years ago, the sun and the moon had a quarrel that would stop time itself. They argued about who brought warmth or coolness to the world, and in their anger, they dimmed their brightness. Kofi's eyes sparkled as he spoke, drawing them into his woven tapestry of storytelling. As darkness engulfed the land, the flowers wilted and the animals grew fearful. It was a little bird, trembling yet brave, who gathered courage to remind them of their purpose. What purpose? One villager muttered, their curiosity piqued despite the turmoil coursing around them. Kofi continued, the little bird sang a melody of unity. It spoke of how the sun's warmth embraced the moon's cool respite, creating a cycle of balance, a rhythm that allowed life to flourish. In time, the sun and the moon saw the truth in the bird's song and understood that they needed one another. Together, they created a dawn perfect for all creatures of the earth. With each word, Kofi felt the atmosphere shift. The villagers leaned closer, tension beginning to ease, as the flickers of realization began to spark within each heart. Just like the sun and the moon, Kofi said softly, we've forgotten how to sing our song together. We're at risk of dimming our light until all we know is darkness. Amina, sitting among them, nodded, catching Kofi's pulse of intensity. She rose slowly, taking one step forward. Kofi is right. Our shared story does not need to be one laden with blame. Instead, it can be a journey of healing and hopes. Speak of your story, Amina, called out a villager named Zuri, the embers of interest flickering once more in her voice. What truth do you carry within you? A tale born of love, Amina began, her voice trembling with emotion. When I was a young girl, my grandmother taught me how to heal using the very herbs that I nurtured in my garden. She told me that healing was never just about the medicine, it was about the relationships we foster with our community. Each person we helped became a thread woven into the tapestry of our lives. With each tale she unveiled, she painted vibrant imagery of laughter, pain, joy, and sorrow, the essence of what it meant to belong. When I experienced loss, it was this village that found me and carried me to safety. I learned then that we must embrace both our light and our shadows, and that they can guide us toward unity. As her words flowed, Kofi witnessed the shift unfolding among the villagers, a slow thawing of the ice that had fortified their hearts against one another. Their discords transformed into newfound understanding. Like the sun and the moon, we are all here together to share our light and support one another, Amina continued, her voice now resonating with strength. None of us deserves to suffer alone. We must remember our shared stories, the joys once celebrated, the bonds crafted, and all the times we have stood together against adversities. One by one, the villagers echoed their stories, tales of gratitude, forgiveness, and the laughter woven throughout their shared past. Each testimony was a drop of water nurturing the parched soil of their community, encouraging new growth. The stories painted a path forward, igniting the villagers' spirits and helping them reconnect with one another. Wait, called Mama Omari, her voice breaking through the chorus of voices. These stories, we must create our new narrative written from our shared struggles. If we take down the barriers that divide us and embrace the moments that unite us, we will return to the blessings of the rains. A thoughtful silence enveloped the gathering, and Kofi felt a warmth rising within him. They were entering new territory, stepping forth with a renewed commitment to weave together the chapters of their lives, acknowledging the beauty of each voice. Then let us all share a piece of our truth, Kofi encouraged, a smile breaking across his face. Together, let our stories ring through this village like a melody that harmonizes our hearts. As the night wore on, the atmosphere transformed from one of fear and isolation to a celebration of community and love. They shared challenges faced, laughter exchanged, tears spilled, and dreams forged. Each story interconnected like a web, stronger together than apart, channeling the healing energy that coursed between them. Under the soft glow of the moonlight, the villagers created a living story, one that embraced every shadow, every ray of light in their hearts. The power of their stories merged into a resounding promise. They would journey through their pain, emerge united with purpose, and rewrite the narrative of their village. In this transformative moment, Kofi understood that strength could be found in vulnerability, healing was an ongoing journey, and together, they could rise from the ashes of despair. With the embers still glowing in the distance, hope began to unfurl its wings, a symbol that their light would guide them through the storm and into a brighter dawn ahead. Unraveling truths. The threads of connection that Kofi hoped to weave among the villagers began to gather strength after the profound storytelling night. The moonlight bathed the village in a soft glow, illuminating the faces of those who had shared their truths together. Yet beneath that light, the shadows lingered, each villager bearing their own scars of fear and doubt. As dawn broke, fear had not entirely dissipated. Kofi, filled with hope from the previous night's revelations, hurriedly made his way to the healing hut, eager to speak with Amina. She had taken her stories and transformed them, and he sensed a renewed energy coursing through her. However, as he neared her home, Kofi overheard raised voices spilling out from within. His heart sank as he recognized Mama Omari's tone. It was a blend of frustration and determination. "I cannot let this go on," she exclaimed, her voice sharp against the serene morning. "Just because we shared stories doesn't mean the truth of our situation has changed. Amina still poses a risk." "But the stories are our truth, Mama," Amina's voice replied, a mixture of sorrow and strength unmistakable in her timbre. "When we open our hearts, we can connect through our pain and fear, instead of perpetuating further distrusts." Kofi hesitated at the threshold, wrestling with the fear of entering the battleground once again. But he understood that the weight of silence often bore the heaviest burdens. Summoning his courage, Kofi stepped inside, heart racing. Amina stood near her work table, her posture strong but her eyes shadowed. Mama Omari faced her, unmistakable tension etched across her face. "Mama, wait," Kofi called out, his voice steadying as he approached. "We can't retreat into anger. If we worked to uncover the truth together, maybe." "Enough, Kofi," Mama Omari interjected, her frustration brimming. "What truth do you think remains? The truth is plain. A drought has struck us, and Amina is here with her remedies, yet nothing changes." Kofi clenched his fists, determination bubbling within. "Nothing changes because we keep blaming each other instead of working as a community. Amina is still here. Maybe she has something to offer that we haven't considered." Amina's eyes filled with gratitude as she felt the support in Kofi's words. "I have been gathering herbs. I believe they could help not just your bodies, but our minds as well. Healing can come from within." Mama Omari, despite her fierce resolve, softened slightly but remained anchored in her frustration. "You think potions will save us? Why should I trust in remedies when the real threat lies with uncertainty? We've had enough of false hope." Kofi realized then that hope was more fragile than he'd imagined. But what if those remedies give us the strength to face what lies ahead? "Amina knows how to heal, Mama. What we need are answers." A silence descended, heavy with contemplation, sparking the flickers of realization in both Amina and Mama Omari. Kofi recognized how they were wrestling with truths of their pasts, the pain of loss and fear that pulsed through their community. "What do you mean by answers?" Amina inquired gently, striving to reach the heart of their turmoil. A flicker of vulnerability crossed Mama Omari's face, but still, confusion possessed her. Kofi sensed that beneath her fierce exterior lay a depth of worry for her children and village. "There's a part of our truth that seems buried," he said, almost in a whisper, "the truth we never talk about. All this anger hasn't eased our suffering. Instead, it has deepened the divide between us." Amina nodded thoughtfully, the weight of his words pulling her into deeper reflection. "Sometimes our greatest truths arise from the shadows. We need to face our fears if we wish to foster healings." Kofi took a deep breath, trembling with courage. "I know it's hard, Mama. But if we can share this burden together, we might discover something monumental." "What burden?" Mama Omari asked, an edge of curiosity cracking through her skepticism, her eyes searching Kofi's. "The burden we carry within us," he admitted, feeling the pulse of honesty surge through him. "Doubt, loss, guilt, pain. What if we share those truths rather than hide them behind walls of anger?" A melancholy silence filled the room as Kofi's heart ached for the connection that they so desperately sought but couldn't seem to grasp. He felt a trembling hope at the prospect of unearthing their buried truths. After a moment, Amina stepped forward, vulnerability stitching her brows together. "I have faced my own fears throughout this time, the pain of loss that lingers so deeply. Because of that pain, I buried many feelings in my heart, unsure of how to share them." Kofi listened intently as Amina continued. "The very herbs I collect in my garden became my escape. Yet, without sharing the emotions that lie behind those actions, I still feel lost." Mama Omari's expression began to shift, the deep lines of anger giving way to cracks of understanding. "Loss is something I feared. The drought brings reminders of uncertainty, and I can't lose you, Kofi, or anyone else I love," she admitted, her voice quaking. Kofi felt the bonds between them shift. "We've all felt the loss of hope in different ways. But I believe that in sharing our truths, the stories that shaped us, like those of our past, we can find the strength to open up and heal together." Mama Omari's heart softened further. "Talk of loss scares me, Kofi. It bears an edge of reality I've tried to ignore." She looked toward Amina, an acknowledgement in her gaze that softened the edges of their earlier confrontations. "But you have something to offer if we allow it. Perhaps we need to delve deeper into what haunts us." As the revelation hung in the air, Kofi felt anticipation and trepidation weave through him. "We should hold a gathering to share our stories, a space where we can speak of our fears and losses." Only then can we unravel the truth at the heart of our sufferings. Mama Omari nodded, her fierce demeanor giving way to a renewed understanding. A spark of brilliance glinted in Amina's eyes as she articulated, "Stories can dismantle loneliness. They can create a bridge when trust is frayed, leading us back to each other." Emboldened by their willingness to explore the depths of their emotions, Kofi held Mama Omari's gaze firmly. "Join me, Mama. Let's gather the village. Together we can bring forth the conversations we have long avoided. We can confront the storms within us." In that moment, a silent agreement passed between them, a fragile truce woven from understanding. Their hearts opened to the world of emotions they had long concealed. "A gathering of truths," Amina murmured softly, her heart swelling with hope as she recognized the importance of breaking down the walls that had separated their lives. With a shared commitment to one another, Kofi, Mama Omari, and Amina stepped toward the door, ready to embrace the vibrant tapestry of interconnected stories that awaited them. They understood that facing the truths within would forge their path to healing, weaving the fate of their village into something stronger and more beautiful. A story filled with light, understanding, and hope awaiting to be unveiled. Hearts aflame. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden hues across the village, transforming it into a landscape of warmth and promise. In the heart of the community, the villagers assembled, hearts aflame with anticipation. Kofi stood at the forefront, a mix of excitement and nervousness swirling within him. Today, they would gather to share their truths, to unravel the stories that had long been buried beneath layers of fear and doubt. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, evoking a sense of unity among the people. Kofi could feel the palpable energy surrounding them, the whispers of hesitant voices weaving through the assembly. Each villager carried their own burdens, and he sensed a collective yearning for connection, healing, and understanding. As evening settled in, a circle of villagers formed around the great baobab tree, its branches stretching like open arms embracing them all. Kofi's heart raced as he glanced across the faces illuminated by flickering torches. Mama Omari stood beside him, her eyes scanning the crowd, proud and resolute. Amina joined shortly, carrying a bundle of herbs, symbols of healing, and placed them carefully at the center of their gathering. "Welcome," Kofi began, his voice steady despite the fluttering nerves. "Today, we unite to share our stories, the truths that bind us together. In sharing, we will find strength, hope, and perhaps, the healing light we so desperately seek." A chorus of murmurs rippled through the crowd, and Kofi gestured toward Amina. "First, let us hear from Amina, who has always been there for our village, healing our bodies and spirits." Amina stepped forward, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Thank you, Kofi. When I was a child, my grandmother taught me that healing is not just about potions and herbs. It is also about the relationships we build within our community. She would speak of the power of connection, the way our hearts can blend together, motivating us to help one another. I still remember a particular rainstorm, so fierce it seemed the heavens had opened. Our village faced devastation, but we came together, supporting one another, and from that unity, we found strength. Our resilience grew like the tallest trees." She paused, emotion shimmering in her eyes. "In that moment, we weren't just neighbors, we became family. And it is that bond that still guides me in my work today." Kofi felt hope coursing through him. The warmth in Amina's voice beckoned others to share. "Remember the harvest feast last year?" called out Zuri, a spirited woman with a fierce love for her family. "We had bountiful crops to celebrate. But it wasn't just the food that made it special, it was the laughter we shared, the stories of our past, and the dreams for our future. That joy carried us through even the darkest days of the drought." Laughter and nods of agreement echoed through the crowd. Recognizing the growing courage, Kofi stepped forward again. "Who else has a story to share? Let your heart speak, we are all listening." Step by step, more villagers began to share their experiences, their joys, their losses, and the moments when they felt most vulnerable. With each story shared, Kofi felt the bond between them strengthening, stitching together the wounds that had threatened to tear their community apart. A woman named Mala, overcome with emotion, spoke of the fear she had felt at night, wondering if she would be able to feed her children. "When I found comfort in the warmth of my neighbors, sharing food, looking after one another, it made the darkness more bearable. I learned that we can all be a light for someone else. With each story, the energy of the gathering shifted, transforming from wary glances to expressions of understanding and empathy. The heaviness of their struggles began to lift, replaced with the flicker of renewed hope, sparking brighter than ever before. Finally, Mama Omari stepped forward, filled with apprehension yet driven by a fierce love for her son, her family, and her village. "I must share my own truth," she said, her voice strong yet soft. "For too long, I've held tightly to my fears, believing anger was the best way to protect my children. I see now that anger only leads to division, and I don't want to live in that fear anymore." Kofi's heart soared as he saw the shift in his mother, the transformation sparking something new within her. "I wanted to keep you safe, Kofi, and in doing so, I forgot that love and trust are what you truly need. I'm learning from you, from all of you. We must share our fears in order to combat them, not store them deep within our hearts." A collective sigh rippled through the crowd, the power of her words resonating like a gentle wind across the assembly. As Mama Omari continued sharing her vulnerabilities, Kofi felt a warmth growing within. The stories were like flames igniting, illuminating truths that had hidden in the shadows for far too long. "Together, we will find our way back," Mama Omari declared, her voice infused with a fiery resolve. "Together, we will embrace our shared truths, heal our wounds, and be a family once again." As the gathering continued, Kofi could see the emotional walls crumbling, laughter and tears blending into a beautiful symphony of resilience. Hearts aflame, they were ready to cultivate a new story, one founded in trust, love, and shared experiences. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the stars emerged in the vast sky, twinkling like points of hope. The village gathered, now united, hearts blazing as they faced the challenges ahead with renewed strength and commitment. They were more than just individuals battling life storms. They were a community willing to stand by one another, fostering healing in the warmth of their newfound bonds. Among them, Kofi felt a sense of purpose, understanding that the love shared in stories was indeed a catalyst for transformation. They would nurture their village together with both light and shadows, embarking on an extraordinary journey illuminated by hearts aflame. The dawn of understanding. The stars twinkled above the village like distant beacons of hope, a night sprinkled with twinkling diamonds that mirrored the change in the hearts of its residents. The gathering around the baobab tree had fostered a sense of unity among the villagers, but as the night deepened, Kofi knew that the journey had truly just begun. With the excitement of renewed connections still pulsing in the air, he fell into step with Amina as the crowd slowly began to disperse. The warmth of their shared stories lit a fire of possibility within him, and he felt invigorated by the courage that had been summoned among them. "Amina," Kofi began, turning to her with a thoughtful expression. "I can see it in the way the villagers interacted tonight. They truly want to come together and heal." Amina smiled, a soft glow illuminating her features. "Indeed, Kofi. Tonight was just a glimpse of what we can achieve. However, we must remain vigilant and continue to nurture this newfound understanding. Forging deeper connections will take time and patience." "Do you think everyone is ready to embrace the change?" Kofi asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "What if it's just a fleeting moment of hope?" Amina placed her hand gently on Kofi's shoulder. "Change is always daunting, especially when fear has taken root in our hearts for so long. But tonight, we planted the seeds of trust, and with continual care, they will grow." Their conversation was interrupted as Mama Omari approached, her silhouette gracefully blending into the night. Walking alongside them, she drew her breath before addressing Kofi with a newfound tenderness. "You did wonderfully tonight, my son. It takes a brave heart to share oneself so openly." Kofi's cheeks flushed with warmth, the pride radiating in his mother's voice an endorsement of his journey so far. "Thank you, Mama. I just wanted to help everyone find a connection, something to ease our pains." "I too have been blinded by my own anger and fears," she admitted, gazing off into the distance as if pondering the stars. "But I have spent the night reflecting. Our past struggles have shaped us, yes, but so have our triumphs. We must embrace both." Kofi nodded in agreement, a surge of determination swelling within him. "It's never too late, is it? To heal, to understand, to rebuild." "Never," Amina affirmed, an expression of resolve crossing her features. Tonight was our first step toward truly understanding one another. As they continued their walk, the faint echoes of lingering conversations drifted from scattered groups. Kofi spotted some villagers sitting together, their expressions softened by the connection forged through shared truths. Laughter mingled with whispered secrets, and for the first time in what felt like ages, the atmosphere felt genuinely light. Mama Omari paused, her gaze sweeping over the scene before her. "Look at them, Kofi. They are embracing each other's stories, their hearts intertwined like the branches of this mighty baobab tree. This is what it means to be a community. And this is what healing looks like," Kofi added, feeling a spark of inspiration ignite within him. Just then, Zuri, who had been in conversation with Baiko, approached them with a bright smile. "Hey, do you mind if we all come together again tomorrow? There's so much more we can talk about. I think we're all ready to delve deeper." The faces around her brightened in agreement. Kofi turned to his mother and Amina, who nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely," Amina said. "We should bring everyone together to strengthen these connections. Perhaps we can even share more stories, explore our feelings, and brainstorm how we can support one another." As they began organizing the next gathering, a ripple of excitement surged through Kofi. He felt the strands of unity weaving tighter among the villagers, their hearts yearning for understanding rather than division. The next day arrived with the gentle caress of dawn, sunlight spilling like golden liquid over the landscape. Kofi woke, his spirit buoyed by the hope that had been rekindled the night before. He hurriedly prepared for the gathering, eager to witness the continuing transformation of his community. When he arrived at the baobab tree, the villagers were already assembling, their voices a melody of laughter and light-hearted conversation. Children weaved between their parents, vibrant with joy, while the adults exchanged greetings almost as if they had uncovered long-lost connections. As dusk approached, Kofi took the stage, standing under the sprawling branches that had witnessed generations of their stories. He looked out over the faces illuminated by the muted light of dusk, all gathered to participate in this delicate ritual of understanding. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "We've made incredible strides in just one night. Our hearts are united in a quest for truth and healings." A murmur of agreement flowed through the crowd, buoying Kofi's confidence. He continued, "When we share our stories, we honor our past while also inviting growth into our future. Let's continue to explore our shared experiences today, creating rich connections that resonate long after this night ends." With those words, the villagers began to share once more, some challenging their deepest fears, while others celebrated their triumphs and joyful memories. The conversations intensified, flowing like a river with ebbs and flows, and Kofi bore witness as people made profound connections, unearthing pieces of themselves that had long been hidden. As the sun descended, casting a warm amber light over the assembly, laughter and tears intertwined, resonating with a shared energy of love and understanding. Villagers embraced their shadows and openly expressed their vulnerabilities. Among them, Kofi spotted Amina, radiating warmth and wisdom, just as the sun illuminated the horizon. The bond they had forged, built through shared stories and vulnerabilities, would carry them into the future, one painted with shades of resilience, love, and compassion. As the gathering continued to unfold, Kofi felt a swell of hope fill the space around them. The dawn of understanding had begun, and their hearts were aflame, lighting the way forward on their journey of transformation. Each voice, every story, unique yet interconnected, had laid the foundation for a vibrant community ready to rise together through light, love, and understanding, full of dreams and shared possibilities. Rebirth of the community. The first light of dawn broke through the horizon, soft and golden, illuminating the village with the promise of new beginnings. Kofi awoke with a sense of hope swelling in his heart, the events of the past few days lingering in his thoughts like a gentle breeze. It had only been a short time since they had ignited their hearts through shared stories, but the impact had been monumental. Today was the day of celebration, a ceremony to mark the rebirth of their community. Villagers, uplifted and rejuvenated by the recent gatherings, buzzed with excitement as preparations for the joyful occasion filled the air. Each household offered something, whether food, decorations, or simply their time and energy to foster the atmosphere of unity. Kofi, filled with a radiant energy, joined Amina and Mama Omari under the great baobab tree, now decorated with bright, colorful fabric and wildflowers. Their collective labor transformed into a beautiful tapestry of community spirit. "We've come so far, haven't we?" he remarked, glancing at the tree, which had been a silent witness to their struggles and triumphs. Amina smiled, her hands working deftly as she arranged the flowers. "Indeed, Kofi. These moments remind us of how powerful it is to come together. Today, we celebrate the healing that has begun and the journey that still lies ahead." Mama Omari, brimming with pride, stepped back to admire the tree. "What once represented division is now adorned with the fruits of our labor and love. Our hearts intertwined," she declared, her gaze softening as she looked at her son, "and I couldn't be prouder." As villagers began to gather, Kofi felt a surge of warmth seeing their familiar faces, now filled with renewed energy and purpose. Zuri, Baiko, and other neighbors exchanged laughter, their previous fears replaced with companionship and a shared commitment to nurturing the bonds that had been rekindled. Once the sun reached its peak, the festivities commenced. The villagers welcomed one another with open arms, laughter filling the air as they partook of the bountiful spread laid out beneath the sprawling branches of the baobab. Children mingled, their laughter ringing like joyous bells above the chatter of adults reminiscing and building relationships anew. Kofi stood beside Amina as they watched their neighbors, filled with gratitude. "It's astonishing to feel the energy radiating from everyone. We've truly formed a new community." "Yes, Kofi," Amina replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears of joy. "This celebration bridges the past with the hopes of our future. The work we've done to share our truths is the foundation upon which this rebirth stands." "My heart feels lighter," Kofi said, a smile stretching across his face. "I can't help but think that we can face anything together." The gathering continued, stories weaving through the air like golden threads binding their souls. Each villager took turns to share moments of resilience, inspiration, and gratitude. The tales of struggle were recast as testimonies of triumph, a reminder that vulnerability leads to strength. As the day faded into evening, the villagers encircled the celebratory bonfire that had been constructed in the center of the gathering. The crackling flames danced upward, casting flickering shadows on their faces. Mama Omari stood up, commanding attention as she addressed the group. "Gather close, everyone. This fire symbolizes the light of our shared experiences and the warmth of our community. Like this flame, we will nourish one another. It is our duty to protect the bonds we've formed and honor our importance to one another." Kofi felt a stirring in his chest as Mama Omari's words struck true. He realized that they had birthed more than a celebration. They had sparked a new narrative, one bound by love and understanding rather than fear and division. One by one, they took turns tossing small tokens into the fire: herbs, pieces of cloth, trinkets that represented their vulnerabilities or dreams. As each item surrendered to the flames, Kofi recognized the significance. It was not just a release of burdens, but an affirmation of their commitment to one another. When it was Kofi's turn, he approached the fire with a small stone he had kept close, engraved with a symbol representing his own journey, the intertwining vines that represented the connections they had forged. It was a reminder of how, despite their challenges, they had chosen to grow together rather than apart. As he released the stone into the flames, he closed his eyes and whispered a fervent wish for their future. "May we always embrace each other with love and understanding, no matter the storms that come our way." As the fire burned bright, the villagers erupted in cheer, their hearts swelling with a communal pride that illuminated the night. Kofi looked around, seeing only warmth and friendship reflected in their faces. When the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world into twilight, it marked the end of the day but highlighted a new beginning. Stars glimmered above them, bright beacons in the night, just as their hearts had become as they embraced the dawn of understanding. In this moment of rebirth, the village emerged transformed, a vibrant community resonating with shared tales of resilience, trust, and hope. They understood that their strength would continue to flourish, built upon the bonds woven together through love, respect, and acknowledgement of the past. Kofi felt an overwhelming sense of belonging wash over him. This village, now bathed in warmth, laughter, and understanding, was his family, a collective heart aflame with the spirit of unity. As the festivities continued deep into the night, He knew they would face whatever lay ahead, not as individuals, but as a cherished community intricately bound by love, a family forever united.